As of the recording of this video, the Detroit Pistons are on a 23-game losing streak, and it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. They are getting blown out every single game, with no game being competitive. The losing streak record is closely approaching them, as they have the opportunity to break it. And obviously, this is not the record you would want to get near or break, especially with the amount of young talent and expectations that have been placed on this team. Heading into this year, I feel like most people, including myself, had expected for the Pistons to make a bit of a leap in the Eastern Conference. Not saying that we're going to make the finals, but a plan seemed realistic. With the projected growth of their young core with guys like Cade, Ivy, and Durant, along with the addition of rookie Asar Thompson, it looked like the Pistons were trending upward. But now, after a quarter of the season done, the Pistons season looks like it's over already. They have taken many steps back with players like Ivy. With no generational top-tier franchise-changing players in the 2024 draft to tank for, the Pistons' future looks grim. Ever since the 2008-09 season, the Pistons' last playoff appearance, they have had 13 losing seasons in 15 years. One season including when they made the playoffs in 09 as an 8 seed. The other year, they made the first round just to get swept by the Bucks. By the end of this year, it will be 14 losing seasons in 16 years, an 87.5% rate. This is absolutely abysmal. In this span, they have also gone through 8 different coaches, a new coach about every 2 years. For the past 16 years, the Pistons have either been consistently mid or downright atrocious. They also haven't had any marquee player unless you want to count Andre Drummond in his prime. The most notable star players that have played for the Pistons in the past 16 years has been a washed AI in the twilight of his career, Andre Drummond and Blake Griffin, who was at the tail end of his prime, and maybe Rodney Stuckey. The Pistons have been the worst franchise for the past decade and a half. Considering the Kings' resurgence behind Fox, there is no tangible success for the Pistons teams in the past 16 years except for 2 first-round exit sweeps. We got to talk about the Pistons' draft history since 2008. Obviously, hindsight is 2020, but it is a fun exercise regardless to see how bad the Pistons have been at drafting. In 2008, they had the 29th pick where they drafted DJ White, who they traded to OKC immediately. I'm not going to fault them too much, but it is the 29th pick. However, they could have picked Nikola Petrovic, Mario Chalmers, or DeAndre Jordan. Not stars for sure, but solid role players you would like on your team. In 2009, they had the 15th pick where they selected Austin Day, a forward that they needed on their team. However, if they did need a forward, the next pick was James Johnson, another solid vet. Then in the next 3 picks, Drew Holiday, Jeff Teague, and Ty Lawson were picked, who could have been great successors to Rip Hamilton, especially Drew Holiday with the Pistons' defense style of basketball. In 2010, they had drafted Greg Monroe with their 7th pick, who was a good player for them. However, throughout his career, the NBA evolved past his game, causing him to fade into irrelevance throughout the years. But they passed on drafting Gordon Hayward and Paul George. Gordon Hayward was an all-star in his prime, and Paul George is a Hall of Fame player. However, in their defense, they did have Tayshaun Prince, Rip Hamilton, and Tracy McGrady, so it'd be weird if they drafted a wing. A blunder looking back, but it kind of made sense. In 2011, the Pistons drafted the great Hall of Fame guard, Brandon Knight. He only played 2 seasons in Detroit where he was a good, solid young guard. However, this has been the worst blunder so far. With the next pick, the Hornets selected Kemba Walker, their franchise player throughout the 2010s. If the Pistons wanted a guard, Kemba was a great choice because he had just led UConn to the March Madness championship win. They missed out on picking Klay Thompson, Kawhi Leonard, and Jimmy Butler, 3 Hall of Fame players. Everyone missed on Butler, so I might give them a pass for that, but Klay and Kawhi are not negotiable. The Pistons drafted Brandon Knight over 4 players you want to include Jimmy Butler, who were icon staples in the 2010s decade. This has been their worst draft so far. In 2011, they drafted Andre Drummond at 9 and Chris Middleton at 39. This was their first good draft so far. Whatever you want to say about Andre Drummond, he was the face of the franchise and an all-star for a half-decade stretch. He was the only young notable player on the Pistons during the 2010s. However, even in a good draft, they had Middleton but gave up on him after just 1 season. In 2013, they drafted KCP at 8, passing on CJ McCollum and Giannis. The 2013 has been one of the worst drafts in modern history, and KCP was a solid player for them. This one isn't as bad as the others, as no one knew what Giannis would become. However, they still missed out on a very good guard in CJ. In 2014, they had only 1 pick, and they drafted Spencer Dinwiddie, who they gave up on too early with the 38th pick. The only pick they had in that draft, and they hit on a solid role player, but gave up on him too early. Sounds harmless? Nothing too bad, right? Wrong. The next pick was Jeremy Grant, who did play for the Pistons, but 3 picks later at 41, a Serbian center who was on his way to Denver. I don't know if you guys heard of him. Nikola Jokic, one of the best offensive players in league history, 2-time MVP, 1-time champion. Outside of Andre Drummond, the Pistons needed a backup center. So who did they go with? Joel Anthony. In 2015, they drafted Stanley Johnson at number 8 over Devin Booker and Miles Turner. I understand not drafting Miles Turner with Andre Drummond in the front court, but Devin Booker quickly proved many teams wrong for passing on him. Besides KCP, the Pistons had Jody Meeks at shooting guard, and no other guard moved anything for this team, so drafting Devin Booker would have been a good move. In 2016, they drafted Henry Ellenson at 18 over Pascal Siakam, Karis LeVert, and DeJounte Murray. This is when they got swept in the first round for no reason, hurting their chances at a top pick in a draft with B.I., Jamal Murray, and Jaylen Brown. Again, they could have had all these players, or one of these players, but instead they just decided to have a meaningless season for no reason. In 2017, they drafted Luke Kennard at 12. One pick later, Donovan Mitchell was selected. Runner-up to a very weird Rookie of the Year race, one of the best statistical playoff performers and a top 3 shooting guard in the league right now. They play the same position Luke Kennard plays. The next pick after D-Mitch was Bam, again, just pointing this out. In 2018, they drafted Bruce Brown at pick 42 with their only pick. They got rid of him too early and now is shining in Indiana, after being a big contributor to winning a championship with the Nuggets and the aforementioned Nikola Jokic and KCP. The Pistons have really helped the Nuggets' success indirectly. In 2019, they drafted Seiko Doumbouya at 15 over Brandon Clark, Jordan Poole, and Grant Williams. Again, after another useless first-round appearance where they got swept, the Pistons with no direction could have had chances to land Ja Morant, Darius Garland, or even Tyler Hero. In the 2020 draft, the Pistons selected the best young French player in the league, Killian Hayes, over Tyrese Halliburton, Tyrese Maxey, Devin Vassell, and Emmanuel Quickley. If they wanted to draft a guard, they could have gone with any of these 4, and it would have been an upgrade over Killian Hayes. Not much to say about this, except this was a massive blunder. In the 2021 draft, the first pick, the Pistons selected Cade Cunningham. Cade is playing pretty well throughout his career so far, and I believe in him being a franchise player. This is the second good draft so far for the Pistons. In 2022, the Pistons drafted Jaden Ivey at 5, who had a solid rookie year, but this year is simply not getting enough minutes. Although it is early, if the Pistons wanted another guard, they could have had Shannon Sharp, who is having a great sophomore season in Portland, or they could have had the Rookie of the Year runner-up in Jay Will. Again, it's too early to tell, but I would say this draft was pretty good. Lastly, this year they drafted Asar Thompson, one of my favorite rookies, who has been a defensive star so far, and although it was way too early, I would say they hit on this pick. So in the past 16 years, the Pistons have hit on 3 to 4 drafts maybe, with many blunders, so many missed opportunities to draft stars and future Hall of Famers. Don't even have to mention Darko Milicic. Besides the terrible drafting we went over, there still have been some questionable roster construction decisions. Trying to build around a rebounding run and dunk center in Andre Drummond, who was a good shot blocker but could easily be exposed on defense for more than half a decade, and expecting to go somewhere was a terrible decision in retrospect. The only notable move they made in that time span was a trade for Blake Griffin at the tail end of his prime, and it was an awkward fit. Even now, with Cade Cunningham not being a great shooter, they have 2 solid shooters on the roster with Bogan and Livers. For the past 16 years, the Pistons have had 0 to no direction in their roster construction to make sure their team can flow well and win games. The Pistons have been the worst NBA franchise in the past 16 years through terrible drafting and head-scratching roster construction. They have lacked any sense of direction to move forward, or they've been downright terrible. This season, they have finally have some upside, or a bit of optimism. They are on pace to break the longest season streak losing record, and are on pace to have the worst record in league history. The future is looking quite grim. However, to leave on a positive note, this is how I would fix the Pistons so they can get right back on track to being an up-and-coming young team. Step 1. Give up on the season and trade Bogdan and anyone else not named Cade, Ivey, Duran, Sasser, Thompson, and maybe Stewart. As you can tell, on a 23-game losing streak, their season is so over. They need to make sure they get as many assets as soon as possible so they can make an effective rebuild heading into the future. Step 2. Fire the regime and clean house. Troy Weaver, the GM, has missed out on multiple opportunities through draft picks and trades to improve this roster significantly. He has not proven himself to do anything good or even competent for this organization. Next, you have to fire Monty Williams. he will be a one and done. There's no way you can go on a 20+ game losing streak and still have your job by the end of the season. Not to mention they are on pace to have the worst record in NBA history. Step 3. Pray. Pistons fans, you should pray and hope your team takes this step to make this team a competent and respectable franchise, because at this point this franchise is a massive laughingstock and joke and a punching bag for all 29 other teams. Hoping the Pistons fans are all good, because this is truly dark in Detroit right now. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Thank you.